Someone is attempting to free Kronos.
That is unacceptable. That would derail our plans to conquer the universe. Are you attempting to locate the person who is attempting to resurrect Kronos?
We're trying now. If we find them, what would you like us to do with them?
Whoever is attempting to resurrect Kronos is an enemy of the Daleks. All enemies of the Daleks must be exterminated. Exterminate them. 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 Exterminate them.
Me.
Holy shit, it is the Master!
Yes, it is I, the Master. And I have a proposition for you, Daleks.
We are listening.
Well, I thought instead of you trying to exterminate me, I thought I could work for you. My plan is to use your Ogrons to attack human and draconian ships in the far future, around the 41st century or something. And, was it? No, it'd be about 29 something. But my plan was to have the Ogrons have this some sort of perception filter or something, and make the humans think that they're draconians raiding their ships, and make the draconians think they're humans attacking their ships, and the two would go to war with each other. They're already on Cold War terms anyway, and this would let you Daleks be able to take over the entire universe.
That sounds masterful.
I thought you'd like it.
We agree to this plan, but be warned, if you fail, you will take responsibility.
Of course. Right, I'll go and put it into action. Well, I've become redundant all of a sudden. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who The Time Monster, the fifth and final story of Doctor Who Season 9. And I think I'm probably the only person who actually likes this story. I think it's a fun, enjoyable story. Admittedly, it's a little bit too long. I think 5 parts might have been okay, maybe 4. And there are some silly, tiny bit cringy, and just some slow bits. But overall, I actually had a good time with it. I had an enjoyable time with it. I certainly had better time with it than the blimmin' mutants. So, yeah, but I don't know, I just really liked it for some reason. I know lots of people aren't so keen on this story, so I actually went and watched Jack McCulloch's review. Shout out, by the way, to Jack McCulloch. He's not a fan of this story, but I went to check it out to see what he had to say about it, because I was guessing he was one of the people who wasn't a fan. I was right. And yeah, I can see his points for why he's not so fond of the story. So yeah, and at some points, you know what? Yeah, you got a point. So yeah, but I personally just enjoyed the story. I had a good time with it. I don't think I've had this good of a time since Day of the Daleks. I think it's the most fun story since Day of the Daleks. Sea Devils, I think it's a better story-wise. It's just that that story takes its time to actually do stuff, especially around the middle. And despite some amazing location work done, that one just takes its time. Admittedly, this one is also a bit of a slow one in places. Not completely, I mean, they're fast. Both Sea Devils and Time Monster are faster than the mutants, and maybe even Curse of Peladon. But there are some slow moments. The start seems to become a kind of... It does feel very different to how it ends. It just feels like it's two different stories. The first 3 episodes, then you got a 4th episode in the middle that kind of wraps up that third stuff and then starts off then is just TARDIS stuff, which is actually quite fun. And then the last 2 episodes are Atlantis-based, and then part 6 also does some stuff in non-time. Sorry if you can hear anything upstairs. But I just had some good time. There is some not so good stuff. For starters, the Baby Benton stuff in parts 5 and 6, whilst I did find it funny, I think it doesn't need to be there. It could have been something that could have been cut from the script. It's a joke they can need to include. I mean, I did laugh at the end, but I don't know. I think it would have been better if it was not there. Secondly, I think the woman, she's a feminist, no doubt, but I think all her talk about how the men are bad, I suppose we men bloody deserve everything that she says. But it feels like a Stephen Moffat story where he'll have a female character every now and again say men are bad, or men are silly, or men are stupid, or not as clever. Just having a dig at men, which I suppose we deserve, in a way, after millennium of, or more, 2 or 3 at least, of sexism against women. So at least 2 or 3 millennium of sexism, possibly since the dawn of time, so we probably deserve it. But to me, it just felt like a Stephen Moffat story. It would, every now and again, there would be a woman saying men are not as clever are not very clever. So yeah, it felt like that. And yes, we get it. You aren't fond of men. We get it. And the only person she seems to be okay with is Stuart, who's actually a pretty good character in a way. But this character doesn't let these views define her character. They partly define the character, but not completely. And I don't really have a huge problem with the comments. It's just that she does them so many times. Again, like Stephen Moffat. I'm not worried. I'm not criticising the use of the words. And like I said, I think we deserve it after all. It's just that we get it already by, part 5? Part 4? Part 3? Part 3? In fact, I think there's so many uses in 1 and 2. Then I think, yes, we deserve it. We get it. I also have to say that the stuff set up in part 1 with the dream sequence, and yeah, there's just a couple of unanswered questions that come around later on. Why does the Doctor have that dream sequence? How does the Master find out about Kronos and the crystal? To be honest, that's something that seems to be happening every story. The Master knows about this stuff and just seems to be involved with it somehow by this point. But why does the Doctor have a dream about it? And he's getting a bit panicky in part 1. So yeah, there's some stuff that isn't quite explained like that. The stuff at the university, which is in a fictional village outside of Cambridge. I checked, by the way. It's a fictional village outside of Cambridge. And the Master's now disguised as a professor. You would have thought that people would have recognised him after the events of the Daemons or the Sea Devils by now. You would have known it's all after the kerfuffle from season 9 where he was number 1 most wanted, or here when he's number 1 most wanted. You would have thought people would have noticed him. In fact, how come the Brigadier and Benton didn't notice his voice until afterwards? It's only when the Doctor realises that the name is Greek for Master, well, and Jo as well, she realises it this time as well, that they know it's the Master. Of course. Part 4, I think, is actually pretty good. I like the scenes in the TARDIS that they have. I don't think it's the entire episode. And Jack McCulloch says the entire episode is about... The Doctor spends an episode wondering whether he should go out the door or not. Technically, he's only about 5 minutes at most. But point taken. The Doctor does wonder whether he should go out the door. If this was Colin Baker's Doctor, he certainly would go out the door. Or William Hartnell's. or even Peter Capaldi's. In fact, quite a lot of them would probably have gone right out the door and had a what for at the Master. But Ron Pertwee's Doctor, he's clever. He knows that the Master would probably kill him as soon as he steps out. So he decides to have a little fun and games with him by playing with the sound before the Master makes it sound like he's going back, talking backwards. Whoops. When we get to Atlantis, things kind of slow down for me, but I still find them actually pretty good. I was thinking through the story, I'm enjoying it, but it's probably not going to be as good when we get to Atlantis. But it was still actually pretty good. I think the story actually is weaker when we get to Atlantis, but I think it's still pretty interesting. I think I do agree with Jack, there is some hammy acting throughout the story, especially with the Atlanteans, but we do get some good stuff, and the actress playing the Queen is doing a really good job with the scene she gets. The Master soon takes over Atlantis. I will say, it doesn't take him long. He has to charm the Queen first, and eventually he overthrows the King, and the Doctor and Jo recover the crystal that he takes from them, and he throws the King inside the cell with them. After a nice little scene with the Doctor and Jo talking about a monk he met on the side of a mountain. That's a nice little scene. It does take a while, but it's a nice little talky scene. And then the King is thrown in, and he just dies somehow. I mean, a guard knocks him on the chest with a trident, and he falls to the ground, and he dies of old age, probably. Yeah, that was something I didn't think worked. That was that he just died. Not really any explanation. He had quite a lot of energy to have a go at the guards just before he was knocked down, so I don't know how he died. I mean, even if he was extremely tortured and would have died from that, he still had enough energy to have a go at the guards. So, I don't know. But it's his death that eventually causes the Queen to try and go against the Master. I mean, she was pretty much not completely won over by him, but she was certainly intrigued and attracted. But it's at this point where she's like, no! And tries to have him arrested, but he escapes. And Kronos is released and kills everyone. By the way, I haven't mentioned Kronos yet. We'll have to come back to that. And eventually the Doctor and the Master Doctor and Jo have to chase the Master down to this no space. Actually, Jo's kidnapped by the Master, but she escapes back to the Doctor's TARDIS in the nowhere space after a time ram that she creates. Speaking of Kronos, the Master's plan all along has been trying to release Kronos, who basically, as Jack says, is a bit like Azal from the Daemons. This story is taking a lot of stuff from the Daemons, and we're going to go back to the Atlantis stuff in a second to talk about that. But Kronos then appears as a woman in the space. Previously it was some sort of Birdman, not to be confused with the Michael Keaton film. Some sort of a guy in a birdie costume with this helmet, and he was going around. I'll say this, the noise it makes is a bit scary. Probably would scare younger viewers. But it is a little bit naff. And by the way, what happened to that guy the Master had under his control? The guy who was running the university centre place. What happened to him? Did he die? He just disappeared just not long after the High Priest made his appearance in the present day. Just disappeared. I'm guessing he died. And when we see Kronos in the time space place, it decides to appear as a woman. Might even have been the face of the Queen, but I'm not quite certain. Looks and sounds like the Queen, but I'm not certain. But it's alright. I mean, the way they explain why Kronos can appear like this is because the form is, could be anything, I suppose. I think that's the explanation. It's a bit like the Solitrax from It Takes You Away. That's why it appears as a frog in that story. But it doesn't have to be a frog all the time. And the same with Time Lords. They can be anything, literally, providing they regenerate. Yeah, there's my argues why that works. So, yes, if no one has a problem with Kronos taking different forms in this story, they shouldn't have a problem with Time Lords or Solitraxes taking forms either. The Solitrax taking forms. Although some people do. And eventually Kronos is released, the Master escapes, almost died. He would have, well, not died, but been tormented by Kronos, but the Doctor asks for his release, but they would attempt to take him back to Earth, but he escapes, and we'll see him next season. And the Doctor and Jo manage to get back in time to see the results of the two scientists trying to fix the machine. And yeah, that's the Time Monster. And by the way, this is the third time we see Atlantis. There's even a joke in Magician's Apprentice about how there's about 3 versions of Atlantis out there. And we've already seen Atlantis in The Underwater Menace, albeit in a modern day setting as opposed to historical. So maybe this is a prequel to Underwater Menace. But that being said, the Daemons in the Daemons we heard that as the Daemons destroyed Atlantis because it was a failure. Somehow that ties in with them. So on the other hand, maybe that story is a prequel to Underwater Menace, or maybe Underwater Menace is Atlantis whilst it sunk. There were some people still there, and the other 2 stories imply that no one survived. So yeah, you can tell why they didn't want to make another Loch Ness Monster story when Karen Gillan suggested it. That was something she'd like to do when she was playing Amy Pond. That was a story idea she'd like to have done, but they've done it twice, so it's probably a good idea that they didn't do a third story on the Loch Ness Monster. Except that one, it's easier to understand because we'll get to those 2 stories at a later point. But that's actually less of a problem than Atlantis. Yeah, it's probably a good thing we've never done Atlantis ever again since this story, because we've had 3 different versions of it, and it kind of it is a bit questionable why they would do it a third time. I mean, with the stuff on the Daemons, what they mentioned, it would make sense in terms of being a prequel, as it being that's what happened, and then the Underwater Menace is what's happened to everybody later, and several centuries or millennia later. But this story is pretty different. I'm not sure. Maybe it was part of Atlantis. I'm not quite. I don't know. It's just it's a bit confusing. But there are some other good bits with the time use of time the Master does to try and knock down attack Mike and the unit convoy by using a knight, possibly from the Arthurian times, King Arthur's times. The Civil War, I think they were Cavaliers. They could have been Roundhead. No, I think they were Roundheads. And then a V1 bomb. Luckily, it wasn't a V2. Otherwise, I think that would have been worse for wear when it dropped. So things have been used well with the time stuff. That was pretty interesting and had some good moments. And there was plenty of funny moments. I enjoyed that bit where the Doctor was making his little gadget. Although I think it did cut back and forth between the Doctor and the Master a little bit too often. Overall, I will say this is not a amazing story. I think I enjoyed it more when I was watching it than I do when thinking about it. And yeah, I can actually find some faults with the story now and some problems. And thanks for that review, Jack. You helped me with my thinking about it. Actually, some of that wasn't so great after all. But hopefully, maybe on a later rewatch, you might enjoy it a bit more. You never know. So, yeah, when I was watching this story, I thought, 9 out of 10. Yeah, thought it was good. I don't think it was perfect. There were some things that I didn't quite know what was stopping me. I mean, apart from some of the stuff I didn't know, but some stuff I did know. But there was some sort of mental block saying, I want to give it a 10, but I don't really think I should. Maybe it's all the fan hate. Yeah, maybe I'm being peer pressured into not giving it a score I really wanted to, because peer pressure from other fans and all the hate I'd get and all the whacking and beating up you guys would do. And then, so I was thinking, 9 or 10, maybe just go with 9 because peer pressure. But then thinking about it, and after Jack's review, I thought, actually, it's not that great. I thought it was good, thought it was fun, really enjoyable, but I wouldn't wouldn't put it as that high of a story. I've got a couple of issues, got some nitpicks that are just a bit too big for 9s. So, on the whole, I'm going to give The Time Monster a 8 out of 10. Twice as much as Jack's score, but to be honest, like I said, I think I'm probably the only person who likes this story, or one of the very few. That's alright, I'm one of the very few people who isn't a fan of Genesis of the Daleks, apart from the last 2 episodes, which I think are great, but the other 4, minus maybe the second half of Part 4, not so much, but second half of Part 4, Parts 5 and 6, really good, and I know some people aren't so keen on Part 5. Yeah, let's just agree Part 6 is one of the best episodes made, and just shut up. But yeah, Time Monster. I even had considered putting this first on my overall ranking, but it's not going to be, because there's a much better story that's going to be number 1 on the ranking, and there might even be another story above this. In fact, think about it, this was going to be number 2, but I think it might now be number 3, so that's it from my review of The Time Monster. Thank you for watching, and next up will be the Doctor Who Season 9 ranking. And then we'll be starting Season 10 with The Three Doctors, the 10th anniversary special, except that it was actually broadcast in December 72 and January 73. In fact, the Time Warrior from the start of Season 11 is the story that's closest to the 10th anniversary date. The actual 10th anniversary, because that one was December 73 to January 74. So that one is honestly the closer to the anniversary than any of the Season 10 stories. Especially the story that's supposed to be the 10th anniversary special, or 10th anniversary story. But that being said, it's a great way to kick off the 10th season. So that's fine. Good story. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. I suppose we men bloody deserve all she has having to have bloody. I suppose we men have. Okay. The Doctor does take a couple of minutes to wonder whether he should go out. But, you know what, that's not really... But he has go... Downstairs noise, by the way. Maybe I should have done the sketch first. Okay. And there is,
Holy shit! It's the Master! We agree to this plan? That sound... Yeah. That wasn't funny.
Someone is attempting to resurrect. Fuck.